The stagecoach rattled into Yosemite, California on a blistering afternoon in July of 1878, carrying a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything to hide beneath the long sleeves of her travel-worn dress. Zara Fairweather pressed her gloved hands against her lap, feeling the raised scars beneath the fabric like secret sins carved into her flesh. The other passengers had disembarked at previous stops, leaving her alone for the final stretch of dusty road that wound through the Sierra Nevada foothills into this remote settlement. Through the window, she watched pine trees give way to rough-hewn buildings, a general store, a saloon, a church with a modest steeple reaching toward the cloudless sky. This would be her home now. This would be her salvation or her final mistake. She had answered an advertisement in the Sacramento newspaper 3 months prior. Rancher seeks wife. Must be of good character and willing to work. No drunkards or women of ill repute. The words had seemed like a lifeline when she found them, sitting in the charity house where she had recovered after that terrible night when she had decided living was too hard and dying seemed easier. The matron had found her in time, had bandaged her wrists and scolded her with tears in her eyes, had told her that God had plans for every soul, no matter how broken. Zara was not certain she believed in God anymore, but she believed in second chances because she was still breathing. The stagecoach lurched to a stop outside the general store, and the driver climbed down to open her door. "Miss Fairweather, this here is Yosemite. Your intended should be along shortly to collect you." "Thank you," she said quietly, accepting his weathered hand as she stepped down onto the sun-baked earth. Her traveling trunk followed, landing with a thud that seemed to announce her arrival to the entire town. Several people paused in their activities to stare at the newcomer. A mail-order bride was always cause for curiosity in these frontier settlements where women were scarce and loneliness was as common as dust. She stood there in her gray traveling dress, her dark hair pinned beneath a simple bonnet, her hands clasped in front of her. The gloves were thin cotton, unsuitable for the heat, but she would not remove them. She would never remove them in public. The scars were her shame, the physical manifestation of her weakest moment, and she would carry that secret to her grave. "Miss Fairweather?" The voice was deep and uncertain, and she turned to see a man approaching from the direction of the livery stable. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing dusty work clothes and a hat that shadowed his face until he removed it, revealing features that were ruggedly handsome in an unpolished way. His hair was dark blonde, sun-streaked and slightly too long. His eyes were the color of summer grass, green and alive with something she could not quite name. Nervousness, perhaps. Hope. "Yes," she said. "You must be Mr. Barrett." "Pierce Barrett," he confirmed, holding his hat in both hands. "I am pleased to meet you. I hope your journey was not too difficult." "It was long but uneventful," she replied, the words formal and stiff. They were strangers about to be married, and the awkwardness stretched between them like a rope pulled taut. He studied her face for a moment, and she wondered what he saw. She was 22 years old, neither beautiful nor plain, with dark eyes that had seen too much, and a mouth that had forgotten how to smile freely. Whatever he had hoped for in a wife, she suspected she fell short of his expectations. But mail-order arrangements were gambles for both parties, and backing out now would leave them both in difficult positions. "I have a wagon waiting," he said. "The ranch is about an hour's ride from town. I thought we could be married at the church first, if that is acceptable to you. The Reverend is expecting us." She had not expected such speed, but then again, what purpose would delay serve? They had agreed to this arrangement through letters, and the legalities needed to be settled. That would be acceptable. He loaded her trunk into the wagon and then helped her up onto the seat. His hands were large and calloused, the hands of a man who worked with horses and cattle and land. He released her as soon as she was steady, as though touching her longer than necessary would be improper. She appreciated his restraint, even as a small, lonely part of her wondered what it might feel like to be touched with tenderness again. The church was small and smelled of pine and candle wax. Reverend Matthews was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He performed the ceremony with simple efficiency, the words binding them together in matrimony before God and the law. Pierce spoke his vows in a steady voice. Zara spoke hers in barely more than a whisper. When it was done, Pierce did not kiss her. He simply shook her hand as though they had concluded a business transaction, which in many ways they had. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Barrett," he said. Mrs. Barrett, a new name for a new life. She held on to that thought as they climbed back into the wagon and headed out of town. The ranch, when they finally arrived, was more substantial than she had expected. A two-story house with a wide porch, a large barn, several corrals holding horses, and grazing land that stretched toward the tree line. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow even in summer. "It is beautiful," she said, and meant it. "My father built the house," Pierce told her as he helped her down from the wagon. "He passed 5 years ago. Fever took him. My mother died when I was young, and I have no siblings. It has been just me and my hired hands since then. 3 men who live in the bunkhouse and help with the stock and the land. They are good men, respectful. You need not worry." She nodded, absorbing this information. So she would be the only woman on a ranch full of men. It was not ideal, but she had faced worse situations. He carried her trunk inside and set it in the front room. The house was clean but sparse, decorated with the practical efficiency of a man living alone. "The bedroom is upstairs," he said, then paused, color rising in his cheeks. "I will sleep in the spare room until you are comfortable with other arrangements. I do not expect, that is, I will not force my attentions upon you." Relief washed through her so strongly that her knees nearly weakened. "Thank you," she said. "I appreciate your understanding." "You have come a long way to marry a stranger," he said quietly. "The least I can offer is patience." That night she lay in the bedroom that was now meant to be theirs and stared at the ceiling beams. Through the wall, she could hear the faint sounds of Pierce moving about in the spare room. This man was now her husband. This place was now her home. She had escaped the darkness of her past and landed here in this remote corner of California with a man who had asked for a wife and received a broken woman with secrets carved into her skin. She slept poorly and woke before dawn to the sound of roosters and men's voices. When she dressed and came downstairs, she found Pierce already gone, out to tend to the morning chores. There was a kitchen with a cast-iron stove, and she set about making breakfast from the supplies she found in the pantry. Bacon, eggs, biscuits. Simple food, but she was a competent cook, trained in the charity house where every woman had been expected to earn her keep. Pierce returned as she was setting the table, accompanied by 3 men who removed their hats respectfully when they saw her. "These are my hands," Pierce said. "This is Marcus, and that is Tom and Samuel." "Pleased to meet you, madam," Marcus said. He was the oldest, perhaps in his 40s, with graying hair and a weathered face. Tom was younger, maybe 30, with a crooked nose that had clearly been broken at least once. Samuel was the youngest, probably close to her own age, with red hair and freckles. "Breakfast is ready," she said. "You are all welcome to join us." They ate together at the large wooden table, and the men complimented her cooking with genuine enthusiasm. She said little, listening as they discussed the work that needed doing, fences to mend, horses to break, cattle to move to higher pasture. It was the rhythm of ranch life, and she would need to learn it. The days began to establish a pattern. She woke early to cook breakfast, then cleaned the house and prepared the midday meal. In the afternoons, she tended a small vegetable garden behind the house and mended clothes. She cooked supper and cleaned again, and by the time darkness fell, she was exhausted enough to sleep despite her troubled thoughts. Pierce was unfailingly polite to her. He thanked her for every meal, asked if she needed anything from town, and kept his distance. At night, he disappeared into the spare room and closed the door. They were married in law, but not in practice, and Zara told herself she was grateful for this arrangement, even as a strange loneliness began to settle over her. 2 weeks after her arrival, She was washing dishes when Pierce came into the kitchen carrying a bucket of water from the well. "Let me help," he said, setting it down. "You should not have to carry heavy loads." "I am stronger than I look," she replied. "Perhaps, but you do not need to prove it." He stood beside her at the wash basin, and for a moment they worked in companionable silence. Then his hand brushed against hers, and she flinched instinctively, drawing back. He noticed, of course. "I am sorry, I did not mean to startle you." "It is not your fault." She plunged her hands back into the soapy water, but the damage was done. He had felt her reaction, the way she recoiled from unexpected touch. "Zara," he said quietly. It was one of the first times he had used her given name. "If you are afraid of me, I need you to tell me what I can do to ease that fear." "I am not afraid of you," she said, and it was true. Pierce had shown her nothing but kindness. "I am afraid of myself." He did not press her further, but she could feel his concern like a weight in the air between them. That night she sat on the edge of the bed and made a decision. She could not live like this forever, hiding behind walls of silence and fear. If this marriage was to have any chance of becoming something real, she needed to take a risk. The next morning, as the summer heat began to build, she went outside to find Pierce working with a young horse in one of the corrals. He was patient with the animal, speaking in low tones, approaching slowly, building trust. She watched him for several minutes before he noticed her. "Is something wrong?" he asked, climbing over the fence to join her. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her heart was racing, but she forced herself to continue. "About why I came here. About why I answered your advertisement." He waited, his green eyes steady on her face. "I was in a bad situation," she said. "I had no money, no family, no prospects. I had lost hope." She swallowed hard. "I tried to end my life." She watched his expression carefully, waiting for the judgment, the disgust. Instead, she saw only sadness and something that might have been understanding. "But you survived," he said. "A woman found me and took me to a charity house. They cared for me, and when I was strong enough, they helped me find employment. But I knew I could not stay in Sacramento. There were too many memories, too much shame. I needed to start over." "So you came here?" "Yes." She took a breath. "I need you to understand that I am damaged. I am not the wife you hoped for. I have scars." She touched her wrists through the fabric of her sleeves. "I will always have scars." Pierce was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and gently took one of her hands. "May I see?" Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to run, to hide. But she had started this confession, and she would finish it. With trembling fingers, she unbuttoned the cuff of her sleeve and pushed the fabric back, revealing the pale skin of her inner wrist and the two long scars that crossed it like accusations. He looked at them for a long moment, then did something she never expected. He lifted her wrist to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to the scarred flesh. Tears sprang to her eyes, hot and immediate. "Everyone has scars," he said quietly, still holding her hand. "Some are just more visible than others. These tell me that you fought a battle and survived. That is nothing to be ashamed of." "You do not want to know why?" she whispered. "What drove me to such desperation?" "Not unless you want to tell me," he said. "Your past is yours. What matters to me is that you are here now, and you are my wife, and I would very much like for this to become a real marriage, if you are willing." She looked up at him, this man who had asked nothing of her, who had given her time and space and kindness, this man who had kissed her scars without flinching. "I think I would like that too," she said. He smiled then, a slow sunrise of warmth that transformed his face. "Then we will take our time and learn each other properly." Over the following weeks, they began to talk more. In the evenings after supper, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set behind the mountains. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the hard years after his father died, when he nearly lost everything to debt and bad weather. She told him about her childhood in San Francisco, about losing her parents to cholera when she was 16, about the man she had thought loved her who had taken her money and her dignity and left her with nothing. He convinced me to trust him, she said one evening, her voice steady despite the pain of the memory. He said we would marry, that he was just waiting for the right moment. I gave him everything I had saved. When he disappeared, I lost not just my money, but my position. The family I worked for dismissed me when they discovered I had been involved with a man unmarried. I could not find other employment. No one would hire a woman with a tarnished reputation. Pierce reached over and took her hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. He was a coward and a thief. You deserved better. I believed I deserved nothing, she said. That is why I did what I did. And now? Now I am beginning to think that perhaps I deserve a second chance. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. You deserve far more than that. The first time he kissed her properly was on a warm August evening when the air smelled of pine and dust. They had been sitting on the porch, and she had been laughing at a story he told about a particularly stubborn bull. He had looked at her with such tenderness that her laughter faded, replaced by something deeper and more profound. Zara, he said softly, may I kiss you? She nodded, her heart suddenly racing, and he leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. His lips met hers gently, a question and an answer all at once. She felt something inside her crack open, some frozen part of her heart that had been locked away since that terrible night when she had given up on living. When they finally moved apart, she was breathless. That was nice, she whispered. He grinned. Just nice? Very nice, she amended, and he laughed and kissed her again. That night when they went upstairs, he hesitated outside the spare room. She reached for his hand. Stay with me, she said. Are you certain? I am certain. He was gentle and patient, taking his time, letting her set the pace. When he undressed her and saw the full extent of her scars, not just on her wrists, but on her soul, he kissed every wounded place and whispered that she was beautiful, that she was wanted, that she was loved. And when they finally came together as husband and wife in truth, she felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. The seasons changed, and autumn painted the mountains in gold and crimson. Zara had settled into life on the ranch, no longer a stranger, but truly the lady of the house. She had made friends with several women in town, including the Reverend's wife, who invited her to join a quilting circle. Pierce took her to dances at the community hall and held her close while they swayed to fiddle music. The hired hands treated her with respect and genuine affection, particularly Marcus, who reminded her of the father she had lost. In October, she realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. She told Pierce over breakfast, watching nervously for his reaction. His face lit up like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Truly? We are going to have a child? I believe so, yes. He came around the table and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. This is the best news. The very best news. The pregnancy was not easy. She was often sick in the mornings and tired in the afternoons. Pierce fussed over her like a mother hen, insisting she rest more and work less. She protested that she was not made of glass, but secretly she was touched by his concern. I cannot help but worry, he admitted one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. You are the most precious thing in my life. I am stronger now than I was, she assured him. I have reasons to live. I have you, and I have this child growing inside me. I have a future. Promise me something, he said seriously. Promise me that if you ever feel that darkness coming back, you will tell me. You will not face it alone. I promise, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Winter came with snow that blanketed the ranch in white. The cattle were brought down from the high pastures, and the work became focused on keeping the animals fed and healthy through the cold months. Zara spent more time indoors, sewing baby clothes and preparing a nursery in the small room next to their bedroom. Pierce built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and carving a pattern of mountains and trees into the headboard. On a particularly cold January night in 1879, with wind howling around the house and snow piling high against the walls, Zara woke with pains in her abdomen. Pierce rode through the storm to fetch the midwife from town, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson, who arrived with her bag of supplies and a calm, no-nonsense demeanor. The labor was long and difficult. Zara gripped Pierce's hand and screamed through the contractions, certain she would die, that this was her punishment for having once wished for death. But Mrs. Henderson talked her through each wave of pain, and Pierce never left her side, wiping her forehead with cool cloths and whispering encouragement. Finally, as dawn broke and the storm began to clear, a baby's cry filled the room. "A boy," Mrs. Henderson announced, placing the tiny, squalling infant on Zara's chest. A healthy, strong boy. Zara looked down at her son, at his red face and tiny fists and shock of dark hair, and felt love so fierce it took her breath away. "Hello," she whispered. "Hello, little one." Pierce was crying, tears streaming down his face as he gazed at his son. "He is perfect, absolutely perfect." They named him Peter, after Pierce's father, and he became the center of their world. Pierce was a devoted father, walking the floors with the baby when he cried at night, making silly faces to coax out smiles, teaching him to grasp a finger with his tiny hand. Zara marveled at the transformation in herself. She who had once wanted to die now could not imagine missing a single moment of her son's life. Spring came, and Peter grew fat and happy. The ranch prospered. Pierce sold a herd of cattle at excellent prices and used the money to buy more land and better breeding stock. Zara's garden flourished, and she began keeping chickens for eggs. Life was good, better than she had ever dared hope. One evening in late May, as they sat on the porch watching Peter play with a wooden horse Pierce had carved for him, Zara said, "I have been thinking about the past lately." Pierce looked at her with concern. "Does it trouble you?" "No," she said. "I have been thinking about how far I have come. A year ago, I arrived here with nothing but shame and fear. Now look at me. I have a husband who loves me, a beautiful son, a home. I have a life worth living." "You always had a life worth living," Pierce said. "You just needed time to see it. You gave me that time," she said. "You asked nothing when another man might have demanded explanations. You showed me kindness when I expected judgment. You loved me when I did not love myself." He reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing over the scars on her wrist. They were fading now, becoming pale lines that were part of her story but no longer defined her. "You did the hardest part. You chose to keep living. You chose to try again. All I did was give you a safe place to land." "That is not a small thing," she said. "Neither is the gift you have given me," he replied. "You have made this house a home. You have given me a family. You have taught me what it means to truly love another person." She leaned her head on his shoulder and watched their son toddle across the porch, full of curiosity and joy. "Do you think he will be happy here?" "I think he will be happy wherever he is loved," Pierce said, "and he will be very loved." The years unfolded like the pages of a book, written in seasons and sunlight. Peter grew into a sturdy toddler and then a bright, curious boy who followed his father everywhere and asked endless questions about horses and cattle and the mountains that rose beyond their land. In 1881, Zara gave birth to a daughter they named Penelope, a quiet baby with her mother's dark eyes and her father's easy smile. 2 years later came another son, Paul, who was loud and boisterous from the moment he entered the world. The ranch continued to thrive. Pierce's reputation as a fair dealer and skilled rancher spread throughout the region. He hired more hands as the operation expanded and built a larger bunkhouse to accommodate them. Zara became known in town not just as Mrs. Barrett, but as a woman of compassion who could always be counted on to help a neighbor in need. When a family's barn burned down, she organized a collection of supplies. When a woman in town lost her husband to a mining accident, Zara brought meals and sat with her through the grief. She never forgot what it felt like to be at the bottom, to be without hope, and she made it her mission to ensure that no one in their community felt that alone. Sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet and the children were sleeping, Pierce would hold her close and trace the faded scars on her wrists. "Do you ever think about it?" he would ask. "About that night?" "Sometimes," she would admit, "but not in the way I used to. Now, when I think about it, I think about all the things I would have missed. I would never have met you. I would never have held our children. I would never have known what it feels like to be truly happy. I am grateful every day that you survived," he would say. "Every single day." In the summer of 1885, when Peter was 6 and tall enough to start learning to ride properly, Pierce took him out to the corral to work with a gentle mare. Zara stood at the fence with Penelope on her hip and Paul clinging to her skirts, watching as Pierce lifted their son onto the horse's back. "Hold the reins like this," Pierce instructed, "and keep your heels down. That is it. You are a natural." Peter's face was alight with pride and joy, and Zara felt her heart swell. This was her life now. This was her family. These moments of ordinary beauty were the treasures she had nearly thrown away. "Mama, can I ride too?" Penelope asked. "When you are a bit older, sweetheart," Zara said. "But I promise you will get your turn." "I want to ride now," Paul declared, because he always wanted to do everything his older siblings did. "Patience, little one," Zara said, kissing the top of his head. "Good things come to those who wait." That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Pierce found Zara in the kitchen finishing the last of the dishes. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he asked. "Only 3 times," she replied, leaning back against him. "You are falling behind." "Then let me make up for it now. I love you, Zara Barrett. I love you with everything I am. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." She turned in his arms to face him. "I love you too, more than words can express." He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and she marveled again at the journey that had brought her here. From the depths of despair to this moment of perfect contentment. From a woman who wanted to die to a woman who could not imagine wasting a single day of the life she had been given. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children's growth. Peter became an excellent rider and took on more responsibilities around the ranch. Penelope proved to have a gift with animals, particularly the chickens and the barn cats that followed her everywhere. Paul was fearless and reckless, constantly climbing things he should not and getting into scrapes that left Zara alternating between exasperation and amusement. In 1888, Zara discovered she was expecting again. She was 32 now, and this pregnancy was harder on her body than the others had been. Pierce worried constantly, but she assured him she was fine, just tired. "We are getting too old for this," she joked one evening as he helped her put her feet up. "Speak for yourself," he replied. "I am in my prime." "You are 34, and your back hurt after breaking that horse last week," she reminded him. "That was different. The horse was particularly stubborn." "Just like his owner," she said, and he laughed and kissed her. Their 4th child, a girl they named Paige, was born in February of 1889 during a late winter storm that reminded Zara of the night Peter was born. But this labor was faster and Mrs. Henderson barely arrived in time to catch the baby as she entered the world with a loud, indignant cry. "This one has opinions," Mrs. Henderson said with a chuckle. "You will have your hands full." She was right. Paige was strong-willed from the start, refusing to nurse when she was not ready and sleeping only when she chose to. But she was also joyful, quick to smile and laugh, and her siblings adored her. With 4 children, the house was always full of noise and activity. Zara often found herself exhausted by the end of the day, but it was a good exhaustion, the kind that came from a life fully lived. She would stand sometimes in the doorway of the nursery, watching Paige sleep, and remember the woman she had been when she first arrived in Yosemite. That woman had been a ghost, barely alive, going through the motions of existence without truly living. The woman she was now was solid and real, rooted in love and purpose. One autumn afternoon in 1891, Zara was in town with Penelope picking up supplies at the general store when a woman approached her. She was well dressed but worn, with the look of someone who had traveled far and seen hard times. "Excuse me," the woman said hesitantly. "Are you Mrs. Barrett?" "I am," Zara replied, wondering if this was someone seeking help. "How may I assist you?" "I heard in town that you came here as a mail order bride some years ago," the woman said. "I am considering answering such an advertisement myself, but I am frightened. I do not know what to expect." Zara studied the woman's face and saw her own past reflected there, the desperation, the fear, the fragile hope. "What is your name?" Clara Jennings." "Well, Clara, I will tell you the truth. It is a risk. You are agreeing to marry a stranger and build a life with someone you do not know. It could go very wrong." Zara paused. "But it could also be the best decision you ever make. The man I married gave me a chance to start over. He was patient and kind, and he loved me even when I could not love myself. We built something real together." "Were you afraid?" Clara asked. "Terrified," Zara admitted. "But I was more afraid of staying where I was, trapped in a life that had no future. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." Clara nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty. If you decide to come to Yosemite," Zara said, "please do call on me. Every woman needs friends, especially when starting a new life." She watched Clara walk away and felt Pierce's hand slip into hers. She hadn't heard him approach, but he must have finished his business at the bank and come looking for her. "That was kind of you," he said. "I remember what it was like," Zara replied. "How alone I felt. I want to help others the way I was helped." "You have a generous heart," Pierce said, squeezing her hand. "Only because you taught me that I was worthy of generosity," she said. They walked together back to the wagon where Penelope was already waiting, and headed home to the ranch where their sons would be finishing their afternoon chores and baby Paige would be waking from her nap. It was an ordinary day, unremarkable in most ways, but Zara had learned that ordinary days were the most precious. They were the ones you took for granted until they were gone. The 20th century arrived with celebration and hope. The children were growing rapidly now. Peter was a young man of 21, tall and capable, already talking about starting his own small ranch on a piece of land Pierce had set aside for him. Penelope was 18, beautiful and confident, being courted by the son of a neighboring rancher. Paul was 17 and restless, talking about seeing more of the world before settling down, and Paige at 12 was still wild and free, racing her horse across the fields and climbing trees with the boys. Zara was 44 now, with silver threading through her dark hair and lines around her eyes that came from years of smiling. Pierce was 46, still strong and capable, but moving a bit slower, his hair more gray than blonde now. They would sit together in the evenings and marvel at how quickly time had passed. "Do you remember that first day?" Pierce asked one night as they rocked on the porch, watching the sun set. "When you stepped off that stagecoach looking like you might bolt at any moment?" "I was absolutely terrified," Zara admitted. "I thought you would take one look at me and realize you had made a terrible mistake." "I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," Pierce said, "and I was terrified that you would find me lacking." "We were both fools," she said affectionately. "Perhaps," he agreed. "But we were fools who found each other, and that makes all the difference. In the spring of 1902, Peter married a young woman named Sarah from a ranch near Sacramento. It was a beautiful wedding with the whole community in attendance. Zara cried through the entire ceremony, remembering her own simple wedding to Pierce in the little church, how far they had come since that day. Later that year, Penelope became engaged to Thomas Shepard, the young man who had been courting her. The wedding was planned for the following summer. "I'm losing my children," Zara said to Pierce one evening, half joking but with real emotion beneath the words. "You are not losing them," Pierce said. "You are watching them build their own lives, which is exactly what we raised them to do. And besides, we still have Paul and Paige at home." "For now," Zara said. "But they will leave too, eventually. Then we will have the house to ourselves again," Pierce said, pulling her close. "Just like the old days, except with more gray hair and creaky joints." She laughed, despite her melancholy. "When you put it that way, it sounds almost romantic." "Everything is romantic when I am with you," he said, and kissed her temple. The grandchildren started arriving in 1903. Peter and Sarah had a daughter they named Grace, and Zara discovered the particular joy of being a grandmother, all the love with less of the exhausting work. She would hold little Grace and sing to her the same songs she had sung to her own children, and feel the circle of life continuing. Paul eventually decided he wanted to try his hand at ranching in Montana, where land was cheaper and opportunities more plentiful. He left in the summer of 1904 with a horse, a pack mule, and his father's blessing. It was hard to watch him go, but Zara understood the need to forge your own path. She had done the same thing all those years ago when she boarded a stagecoach to Yosemite. Paige, true to her independent nature, announced at 16 that she wanted to become a teacher. She went away to a training school in Sacramento and returned 2 years later with a certificate and a position at the Yosemite schoolhouse. "I am so proud of you," Zara told her youngest daughter. "You are going to change lives." "I learned from the best," Paige replied, hugging her mother tight. "You showed me that it is never too late to become who you are meant to be." By 1907, the ranch was running primarily with hired help, as Pierce and Zara had stepped back from the day-to-day operations. They still lived in the house, but Peter had taken over managing the business. It gave Pierce and Zara time to enjoy life in a way they never had before, to take slow rides through the mountains, to spend entire afternoons reading, to travel occasionally to San Francisco to see the sights. On one such trip, as they walked along the wharf watching ships come and go, Zara said, "This is where I grew up, right here in this city. It feels like a lifetime ago." "It was a lifetime ago," Pierce said. "You were a different person then." "I was a girl who thought love was a trap and hope was for fools," Zara said. "I did not understand that real love is freedom and hope is the most courageous thing a person can choose." They stood together watching the water, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting. In 1910, they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch. All four of their children came, along with their spouses and children. Peter and Sarah now had 3 children. Penelope and Thomas had 2. Paul had returned from Montana with a wife he had met there, a strong pioneer woman named Margaret. Paige was still unmarried, devoted to her teaching, though she was being courted by the new doctor in town. The house was full of laughter and noise, children running everywhere, adults catching up on news. Zara moved through the celebration feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. This was her legacy, not just her children, but the love that had created them, the home that had nurtured them, the values that would guide them. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Pierce found Zara sitting on the porch steps, looking up at the stars. "Are you all right?" he asked, settling down beside her. "I am better than all right," she said. "I am exactly where I am meant to be." He took her hand and lifted it to his lips, kissing her wrist where the scars had long since faded to barely visible lines. "Do you remember when you showed me these? When you trusted me with your darkest secret?" "I remember being certain you would reject me," she said. I remember thinking no one could love someone as broken as I was. And I remember thinking how brave you were, Pierce said. How much strength it took to survive that darkness and keep going. I remember feeling honored that you trusted me with your pain. You saved my life, Zara said quietly. Not just that day, but every day since. You gave me a reason to live. No, Pierce said firmly. You saved your own life. You chose to answer that advertisement. You chose to board that stagecoach. You chose to say yes when the Reverend asked if you would take me as your husband. You chose to keep trying, to keep hoping, to keep loving. All I did was stand beside you and love you back. Tears were streaming down her face now, but they were good tears, healing tears. I love you so much, more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. I love you too, he said, wiping her tears with his thumbs. Every day for the rest of my life I will love you. They sat together under the stars, two people who had started as strangers, bound by a business arrangement, and had become partners in every sense of the word. They had built a life together, raised a family, weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical. They had laughed and cried and fought and reconciled. They had grown old together, and they would face whatever came next together as well. The years continued to pass, gentler now, measured in visits from grandchildren and quiet evenings by the fire. Pierce's hair went completely white, and he developed a limp from an old injury that ached in cold weather. Zara's hands grew stiff with arthritis, making it harder to do the fine needlework she had once enjoyed. But they were together, and that made every difficulty bearable. In 1915, the world seemed to be falling into chaos with war in Europe, but in their corner of California, life remained peaceful. Paige finally married the doctor, a good man named Robert who adored her spirit. Paul and Margaret came for a visit with their two children, sturdy frontier kids who had never seen the California mountains before. "This is where you grew up?" Paul's oldest son asked, looking around at the ranch in wonder. "This is where I learned what really matters," Paul said, his arm around his wife. "Family, love, land you can trust. Your grandfather and grandmother built something special here." That summer, Pierce taught his grandchildren to ride, just as he had taught his own children decades before. Zara would watch from the porch, a shawl around her shoulders even in the summer heat, and feel a deep contentment. This was what it meant to leave a legacy, not just property and possessions, but values and love passed down through generations. One evening in September, as the air turned crisp with the promise of autumn, Pierce was unusually quiet at supper. Zara noticed but said nothing until they were alone. "What is on your mind?" she asked as they prepared for bed. "I have been thinking about time," he said. "How quickly it passes, how precious every moment is." "We have had so many good moments," Zara said. "A lifetime of them." "I know," Pierce said, "and I am grateful for every single one. But I find myself afraid sometimes, afraid of losing you, afraid of leaving you. We are getting old, Zara. We will not have forever." She went to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. "No one has forever, but we have had 37 years, and they have been the best years of my life. Whatever time we have left, we will face it together, just as we always have." "You promise?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I promise," she said. "I will never leave you willingly. And when the time comes that we must part, know that you made my life worth living. You gave me everything." They held each other in the gathering darkness, two souls that had found each other against impossible odds and had chosen love every single day since. Winter came and went, and spring returned to the mountains. They celebrated their 38th anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them remembering. Pierce gave her a necklace he had commissioned in town, a delicate silver chain with a small pendant in the shape of mountains. "So you always carry a piece of home with you," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. "You are my home," she said. "Wherever you are, that is where I belong." In May of that year, Pierce suffered a spell while working in the barn. Peter found him and brought him into the house, and the doctor was summoned. It was his heart, the doctor explained. He would need to rest, to take things easy. Pierce grumbled about being treated like an invalid, but he followed the doctor's orders because Zara insisted. She waited on him hand and foot, bringing him meals, reading to him, sitting with him through long afternoons. Their children came to visit, worried, but Pierce assured them he was fine, just slowing down. We are all getting older, he told Peter. It is the natural way of things. Nothing to fret about. But Zara could see the fear in her children's eyes, the realization that their parents were not immortal, that the day would come when they would have to say goodbye. She understood their fear because she felt it too, a constant low hum of anxiety beneath every moment. By summer, Pierce had recovered enough to move around the house and sit on the porch, though the doctor forbade any strenuous activity. He chafed at the restrictions, but bore them with as much grace as he could muster. Zara stayed close, always within calling distance, afraid to leave him alone. One particularly beautiful evening in July, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, they sat together on the porch swing they had installed years ago. The mountains rose in the distance, eternal and unchanging, and the air smelled of pine and wildflowers. "This is my favorite time of day," Pierce said, "when the work is done and everything is peaceful, when I can sit with you and just be." "Mine too," Zara agreed, her head on his shoulder. "I have been thinking about that first summer after you arrived," Pierce said. "How awkward we were with each other. How I did not know what to say or how to act." "I was so frightened," Zara remembered. "I kept waiting for you to demand things from me, to use your rights as a husband, but you were patient." "I saw the pain in you," Pierce said. "Even before you told me about your scars, I could see it. And I knew that love could not be forced. It had to be given freely." "You gave me the freedom to choose," Zara said, "and I chose you. Every day I chose you." "And I chose you," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Best choice I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Zara thought about all the evenings they had spent like this, watching the day give way to night, safe in each other's presence. How many more would they have? 100? 1,000? Or would this be one of the last? She pushed the morbid thoughts away and focused on the present moment, the warmth of Pierce's body beside hers, the sound of crickets beginning their evening song, the smell of night-blooming jasmine from the garden. This moment was enough. This moment was everything. As summer turned to autumn, Pierce seemed to grow stronger again. He took short walks around the property, always with Zara at his side. He helped Paul repair a section of fence, ignoring Zara's protests that he should rest. He played with his grandchildren when they visited, teaching them card games and telling stories of the old days. "I am not dead yet," he told Zara when she scolded him for overdoing it. "I will rest when I am in the ground." "Do not talk like that," she said, fear making her voice sharp. He pulled her close. "I am sorry. I did not mean to frighten you. But I cannot spend whatever time I have left wrapped in cotton. I need to live, Zara. Really live." She understood, even as it terrified her. So she let him do the things he wanted within reason and tried to treasure every moment. They made it through the winter and then through another spring. Pierce turned 66 in April of 1917, and they celebrated with a family gathering that included all 4 children, their spouses, and 9 grandchildren. It was loud and chaotic and wonderful. "Look at what we made," Pierce said to Zara as they watched the grandchildren play in the yard. "Look at this beautiful family." "We did well," Zara agreed, tears in her eyes. "Better than well," Pierce said. "We did magnificently." That night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Pierce had another spell. This one was worse, leaving him gasping and clutching his chest. Zara sent Peter racing for the doctor, but by the time he arrived, the worst had passed. The doctor was grave. His heart is failing. It could be days or weeks or months. There is no way to know. But you should prepare yourselves. Zara refused to accept it. She had not survived her own darkness, had not built this life, only to lose the man who made it all possible. She stayed by Pierce's side constantly, sleeping in a chair beside the bed, waking at every sound. You need to rest, Pierce told her on the third day. You will make yourself sick. I am not leaving you, she said stubbornly. Zara! He reached for her hand. Listen to me. When the time comes, I need you to let me go. No, she said, tears streaming down her face. I cannot. I will not. You must, he said gently. Just as I let you live your own life, make your own choices, you must let me go when my time comes. It is not goodbye forever, just goodbye for now. I do not know how to live without you, she whispered. Yes, you do, he said firmly. You are the strongest person I know. You survived things that would have broken most people. You built a life from nothing. You will survive this too. But I do not want to, she said. I want to go with you. No, Pierce said, his voice as stern as she had ever heard it. You will stay. You will watch our children and grandchildren grow. You will live the life we built together. You will honor our love by living it fully. Promise me. She could not speak through her tears, but she nodded. Say it, he insisted, and promise me. I promise, she choked out. I will stay. I will live. Good, he said, relaxing back against the pillows. That is all I need to hear. For 2 more weeks he lingered, drifting in and out of consciousness. The family took turns sitting with him, but Zara was always there, holding his hand, talking to him, reminding him of all their years together. On a quiet morning in late May, with sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and the scent of lilacs drifting on the breeze, Pierce opened his eyes and looked at her with perfect clarity. There you are, he said softly. My beautiful Zara. I am here, she said, squeezing his hand. I am always here. I love you, he said. Every moment of every day I have loved you. I love you too, she said, her voice breaking. More than life itself. Remember your promise, he said. Live, be happy, love our family. I will, she said, I promise. He smiled then, that sunrise smile that had captured her heart all those years ago, and closed his eyes. His breathing slowed and then stopped, and he was gone. Zara sat holding his hand for a long time, crying silently, unable to believe that this was real. After 40 years together, she was alone. The thought was unbearable, but she had made a promise, and she would keep it. The funeral was well attended, with people coming from all over the county to pay their respects. Pierce had been a respected member of the community, known for his fairness and integrity. Zara stood beside his grave, flanked by her children, and watched as they lowered him into the ground. She thought about kissing her scars all those years ago, about asking nothing, about giving her time to heal. He had been her salvation and her strength, and now he was gone. But their love remained. It lived in their children and grandchildren. It lived in the ranch they had built together. It lived in her heart, a constant presence that would never fade. The months after Pierce's death were difficult. Zara moved through the days mechanically, doing what needed to be done but feeling hollow inside. Her children worried about her, but she assured them she was fine. She was keeping her promise to Pierce, staying alive, staying present. Slowly, gradually, the grief began to transform into something softer. Not gone, never gone, but manageable. She found joy again in her grandchildren, in watching them grow and learn. She found purpose in helping her community, in offering comfort to others who were grieving. She found peace in her memories, in the knowledge that she had been truly, deeply loved. One evening, almost a year after Pierce's death, Zara sat on the porch watching the sunset. She touched the necklace he had given her, tracing the outline of the mountains, and felt his presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. "I kept my promise," she said aloud. "I am still here. I am still living." A breeze ruffled her hair, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers, and she smiled. It was not quite the same as hearing his voice, but it was enough. She lived for 12 more years, surrounded by family, making new memories while cherishing the old ones. She saw her grandchildren marry and have children of their own. She saw the ranch continue to thrive under Peter's management. She saw Paige become a beloved teacher whose students remembered her decades later. She saw Paul build a successful life in Montana and watched as his children came to visit every summer, keeping the connection strong. In the spring of 1929, at the age of 73, Zara's health began to fail. She had lived a long life, far longer than she had ever expected, back in that dark moment when she had tried to end everything. She had no regrets, no lingering sorrows. She had lived fully and loved deeply, and that was more than enough. Her children gathered around her bed, just as they had gathered around Pierce's, and she looked at each of their faces with profound love. "Do not be sad," she told them. "I have had a wonderful life, more than I ever dared hope for." "We love you, Mama," Penelope said, crying. "And I love all of you," Zara said. "You have brought me such joy. Promise me you will take care of each other, that you will remember what your father and I tried to teach you." They promised, their voices blending together in a chorus of love and grief. As the sun set on her last day, Zara closed her eyes and thought of Pierce. She imagined him waiting for her, standing on that porch they had shared for so many years, his hand outstretched, that sunrise smile lighting his face. "I am coming," she whispered. "Wait for me." And then she let go, releasing her hold on life with the same courage she had once used to cling to it. She had kept her promise. She had lived fully and well, and now finally she could rest. They buried her beside Pierce under the mountains they both loved, and on her headstone the children had inscribed, "She chose to live, and in living, she loved." The ranch continued for generations, passed down through Peter's line, and the story of Pierce and Zara became family legend, the tale of the mail-order bride with scars on her wrists and the cowboy who kissed them and asked nothing, who gave her time and space to heal, who loved her without conditions. It was a story of second chances and the transformative power of love, a reminder that even the darkest moments can give way to light if you are brave enough to keep going. And in the quiet evenings when the family gathered on that old porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains, they could almost feel the presence of those two souls, still together, still in love, their story echoing through the generations like a promise that love, real love, never truly ends.